Okay, you're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So good evening, members of council, staff, and the general public. Welcome to our public meeting of Monday, May the 17th. I'll ask to open the public meeting. So if I can have somebody move, please. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any additions to the agenda? Not seeing none.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Haley. If I can have somebody approve the agenda, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Warden, second by Councillor Jaworski. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Not seeing none. We'll move right into number 4, right into presentations and delegations. I was asked to switch them around this evening. So the first one is going to be the proposed zoning amendment for A.L. McDonald Groceries. So I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our meeting this evening. For members of the public that are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak after the respective application following my presentation. Prior to speaking, please state your name and address for the record. To make a comment, please use the raise hand function and the chair will call on you if you've registered to participate in the meeting by phone. To speak to a particular application, you will be asked if you would like to comment on the application after the applicable presentation. So now I'm going to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act. This is a hearing under Section 34 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this hearing and or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions at this hearing before the zoning amendment is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, also known as LPAT. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a hearing or make written submissions to the township before the zoning amendment is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I'm now going to start off with our first application this evening. So our first application is known as the A.L. McDonald Groceries Application. This property is located in Williamstown, right on the corner of County Road 17 and Bridge Street, or County Road 19. And everyone's very familiar with this location in our municipality, I believe. It's known as the McDonald's Grocers and the Ye Olde Bridge Cafe. So as I mentioned, this property is located in Williamstown. It's at part of lots 29 and 30, registered plan number 19. And it's also known as 19688 County Road 19 or Bridge Street. So I now have a couple of images I'd like to share with the committee or with council and the public. So this is the property that we're looking at. I think again, everybody's familiar with the store in this corner of Williamstown. And then this portion of the property is really what we're looking at speaking to this evening. So over the years, improvements and new construction has occurred on the subject property. Some construction has occurred without approvals or permits. And the purpose of the zoning amendment this evening and the public meeting this evening is to recognize the existing uses and to bring the structure into compliance with the zoning bylaw. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone the subject property from Hamlet Commercial and Natural Hazard to Hamlet Commercial Exception 2 and Natural Hazard Exception 1 to reduce the watercourse setback from the top of bank from 30 meters to 0 meters, to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 40 meters to 27 meters, to increase the maximum lot coverage from 20% to 31%, to reduce the front yard setback from 3 meters to 1 meter, and to reduce the exterior side yard setback from 3 meters to 0.4 meters, and to recognize all existing buildings and structures, as well as the 2 existing parking spaces and 1 loading space as permitted uses in the bylaw. Many of you realize that most of the structure has existed for many, many, many years, and therefore would not have been able to meet the compliant or come into compliance with the zoning bylaw today. Therefore, that is why we're looking to recognize the existing buildings and structures and the parking that can be provided. So this is another image of the deck. So this area is an area that we're really speaking to in the zoning amendment in terms of the 30-meter setback reduction to 0. You can see that the deck is piled into the side of the riverbank. And the bylaw reads that your setbacks have to be from the top of the bank. That's why we're looking at a 0-meter setback in this location. So the subject property is currently designated rural settlement area in the county official plan, and the proposed amendment conforms to the official plan. And the zoning amendment will be subject to a decision of council. I anticipate bringing this application to our next council meeting, which would be June 7th. I've received only one inquiry to date on this application, and it really was a general inquiry. There was no negative comments or issues brought forward. The application has been circulated to the Raisin Region Conservation Authority. They do not object to the proposed amendment. They've been very involved in this property over the years, looking at shoreline erosion, shoreline stability, and impacts to the habitat, if any. We've also circulated to the United Counties. However, their comments are not due until my staff report would be due for council. So as I mentioned, we'll be bringing a recommendation to council for a decision in the near future. So that's all I have to offer. On the meeting this evening is a gentleman by the name of Eric Foran. He's employed with J.L. Richards and Associates. J.L. Richards is an engineering, architectural, and planning firm that has been working with A.L. McDonald's Grocers to bring them into compliance. And I offered to introduce Eric to see if he had anything else he would like to add to the application this evening. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Saley. I'll first open it up to members of council if they have any comments or questions. And if there's anybody from the public, please put up your hand so I can see that somebody would have a question. Deputy Mayor Warden, if you would, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair. I'm happy to see this come forward. I know that this has been a file that's been on the go for some time, and I'm hoping that we can get through this and turn the page for the landowners. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you 100%. It's been on our records for a number of years now, so it'd be nice to see it finalized completely for the grocery store owners. But is there any other comments or questions from members of council?
Mr. Mayor, I think I'm still controlling the meeting, and if you want to just ask, and I'll let them speak if anybody from the public.
I don't see anybody with their hand up in the public, but I'll ask one more time. If somebody does have a question, to please state your name and your address.
Nobody's raising their hands, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm not seeing any either. So, okay. Is there anything else to add, Mrs. Haley, to the public meeting for the McDonald's Groceries?
No, not at this time. Thank you. We can move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into the second one, which is the proposed zoning amendment for Shell gas station.
Okay, so our next application is located on part of lots 2 and 3, registered plan number 26, in the geographic village of Lancaster, now in the township of South Glengarry, also known as 6071 County Road 34. This is the key map of where the property is located. You can tell it's at the north end of the village of Lancaster. Where my mouse is, this is along County Road 34. And just to help orient everyone, this would be where what I still call the Shadow Garden long-term care facility is located. And I believe it's now called Chartwell. So if that helps orient everyone. And this is an image of the subject property. So this is where the house is, and you can see it's located directly behind Shell gas station, so to the east of the Shell gas station. And this is another image as well, where you can see the gas station in this location and the dwelling here. So just to provide some additional information, the subject property is located directly behind the Shell gas station. It is accessed off of County Road 34. That's why it has a County Road 34 civic number. And the approximate total area of the subject land is 0.2 acres in size, and it is privately serviced. The subject property is residentially developed, containing a single detached dwelling. The purpose of this amendment is to rezone the subject property from residential 2 to hamlet commercial. And the subject property was recently merged to the abutting property to the west, which is the Shell gas station. And it's the goal of the gas station owners to redevelop this property in the future and proposes to utilize that subject property. So again, I just have a few more photos to share just to help orient any members of the public participating. So this is a view looking east. And then this is just a closer view where you can see the house is almost in the rear yard or backyard of the gas station. So the subject property is currently designated residential district in the county official plan and is located in the urban settlement area of Lancaster. And the proposed amendment conforms to the OP. So a zoning amendment application will be subject to a decision of council, and a staff report including a recommendation will be brought to council in the near future. If this amendment is approved, the proposed development will be subject to site plan control approval process if and when they choose to develop. And at this time, we don't have plans, site-specific plans for them to move forward immediately, but we do know it is the intent of the property owner to do redevelopment at some point of time, which is why they purchased the property. So I have no comments from the public to date. However, the applicant has hired a consultant by the name of John Meek, and Mr. Meek is going to speak to the application now and provide a little bit more planning rationale for the members of the public this evening to support the requested amendment. So if Mr. Chair, if Mr. Meek is on board, we're ready for him to jump in.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Haley. Mr. Meek, are you on?
I could see him there, Mr. Mayor, so maybe he just needs some time.
Okay, can you
Oh,
hear
there
me
he
now?
is.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Mr. Meek, can you, we can hardly hear you. If you can either speak it closer to the mic or if you could turn your volume up. I'm not sure which one. Better, but...
Okay, here we go again with the volume. Can you hear me any better now?
Somewhat. So let's try it and see, and I'll watch for councillors' motions or hands to go up to see if they can't hear you, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to speak right into the mic. I even changed my headset this time. I guess it's something else. So I'll just walk through the proposed use, the planning policy and regulatory framework, and the planning rationale for the subject property. As Joanne mentioned, the location already, this picture on the slide now can just show you the existing commercial zone where the Shell gas station is located, and the residential zone of the subject property, which was recently purchased by my client, Mr. Leger. The proposed development is really to continue with the gas station and convenience store, but to reorient the site to be more efficient, possibly add another gas pump. The dwelling, the residential dwelling, would be removed at that point. And there's a possibility, depending on the site plan control process, that office space and possibly some storage could be included in the redevelopment process. Just to note, actually, if you could go back a slide, thanks, Joanne. Residential properties to the north and adjacent to the east. On the west side of County Road 34, we have agricultural lands that are zoned residential, but currently in agricultural use. And as Ms. Haley mentioned, the long-term care home to the south and a hydro transmission line as well in between the long-term care home and the Shell gas station. Also, like to mention while you're looking at the picture is that municipal services extend to the long-term care home currently, but not further north to the subject property. Next slide, please. So with respects to provincial policy, there's 4 main policies that are relevant to the proposed rezoning. The first one speaks to settlement areas and the importance of settlement areas as long-term economic drivers in communities. They should be the focus of growth and development and contain a mix of land uses, as well as provide for opportunities to intensify and redevelop properties. And that's the case with what we're proposing for the subject lands, is an intensification of use. Employment policies speak to planning authorities promoting economic development and competitiveness. As far as infrastructure is concerned, optimizing infrastructure in settlement areas is a focus of the provincial policy statement, and municipal sewer and water are the preferred form of servicing in settlement areas. Long-term economic prosperity is highlighted in the PPS as far as promoting opportunities for economic development and community investment in settlement areas. Next slide, please. With respects to the United Counties of SDNG official plan, intensification is also included in the policies under commercial areas, main streets, and downtowns, in that intensification of existing buildings is encouraged as long as the design is sensitive to adjacent properties or sensitive land uses, which would be the case when the owner would get to the development stage, and site plan control process would be followed to ensure all of the requirements related to parking, water supply, sewage disposal, safe access, etc., would be covered. And as far as water and sewage servicing, the United Counties official plan does provide for individual on-site water and sewage systems outside of service limits, but within settlement areas where pockets of private services exist. And that's the situation with this property, in that it's within the urban settlement area, but outside the service area. So it's currently on a private well and septic. So that option remains as long as it's in accordance with Section 8 of the Building Code, and that would again be addressed at the site plan control stage. So as far as planning considerations go in policy, relevant policies, the proposed use increases investment in an existing business service in Lancaster since 2011. Consolidation of the subject property with the Shell gas station property and the rezoning would provide options for redevelopment of the commercial use to a more efficient layout. The intensification builds on current use with options for private or municipal services. And the scale of development would be determined through site plan control. So there's lots of options, but frontage, access, landscaping, buffering, screening, separation, environmental approvals, all of that would be covered through site plan control. With respects to the zoning bylaw itself, the western portion, so the Shell gas station, is zoned Hamlet Commercial C1, which is the pink square you can see in the middle of the picture. And this permits the motor vehicle gas bar and retail store. The eastern portion of the subject property is zoned R2, residential low density. And the zoning bylaw has general provisions that are specific to a motor vehicle gas bar. So there's, and all of these provisions would be adhered to during the site plan control process. So the permitted area of the convenience store, detailed parking provisions, these are all, would all be respected through site plan control. So as far as conclusion and a planning rationale for the proposed use, it does conform with the policies of the provincial policy statement, as well as United Counties of SDNG official plan. Rezoning the subject property facilitates the intensification and reorientation of the site to continue to provide service and economic development in the hamlet of Lancaster. And again, site plan control requirements would be addressed at the development stage. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So John and I would be happy to answer any questions if required. And I don't think we have anything further to add at this time.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Haley. Thank you, Mr. Meek. I will open up the questions for members of council. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a frequent flyer and air miles collector, I go to the gas station quite often. There's quite a bit of pooling of water where the vehicles park, which basically in the springtime ends up on the front lawn of that house, kind of becomes like a lake there. So if this property, the zoning goes ahead, the site plan control, will that deal with the drainage issues that are currently there, Ms. Haley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it will. So if they choose to move forward in redeveloping the site, one of the first tasks is to complete a topo survey. And that survey is going to reveal any depressions or any areas of ponding. And in order to meet our site plan control bylaw, you have to provide existing grades and proposed grades and make sure that the drainage is functioning. And especially with a property like this, I would imagine that there would be a larger paved area if it's redeveloped. And so the engineers at that time can either look at catch basins or look at sloping the property to make sure it's properly drained towards whichever direction the water should go. It could be the county road ditch or it could be towards the east. But yes, it'll be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Not seeing none. Is there anybody from the general public that has a comment or a question? If you do, if you can just state your name.
Mr. Mayor, I see that Randy Vandelite has his hand up.
Yep.
Would you like me to unmute?
Yes, please unmute him. And Mr. Vandelite, if you can state your name and your address, please. Once you're unmuted.
You'll have to unmute yourself at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen.
All right.
There you go. Okay,
Sure.
go ahead, Randy. Oh, you were back on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There
I'm
you
not
go.
good with computers.
Join the crowd. Yep.
So, my name is Randy Vandelite. I live on that street just east of the gas station.
What's your civic number, Randy?
6075 and 6073 are both my addresses
Okay.
on this property. Now, I know my one concern was that Lyle mentioned about the water drainage. As of right now, I see a lot of their fuel trucks parked there along that house, that existing house. And I've noticed when it rains, there's flotation of oils, and now that's something that I'm concerned about coming towards on my property. So that is one issue that, I think you guys are addressing, which is good, but definitely don't want it to come near my property. And I guess my second question to that would be, I didn't really get a confirmation of what's going to be developed there. Like it was mentioning of office or storage space or gas pumps. Is there something you can tell me whether, like, are the gas pumps coming closer to my property? Is there going to be a building between it? So these are some things that are concerning me, I guess, for my property. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with words here, but I feel like, but I think, yeah, we'll start with that.
I think we understand your question, so I'll ask Mr. Meek if he has any more specifics in regards to what would be taking place on the subject property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as specifics, I guess we still be considered at the concept stage, but what has been discussed so far would be the addition of one extra pump. And as far as reorientation of the pumps, again, I haven't seen a concept sketch, but so I think they would just be more on an angle as opposed to the current configuration, but there's really not a huge amount of extra space to move things around too much. So yeah, that's an office space and storage. Again, that will come down to discussions at the site plan control stage and how much room is there and what are the options.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Meek. Mrs. Haley?
Yeah, I think Mr. Meek provided some good information regarding that for this stage of development. So just so that Mr. Vandelite understands, if this application is approved, it would establish the permitted, and it would establish a new zone. And within that new zone would have a variety of permitted uses. And I'm sure you'd like to know more information in terms of the configuration. However, it's not required at this stage of the process. And if and when they choose to develop and we get to site plan control stage, we certainly will be able to work with the public to help them better understand what the layout is, as we would have actual concept plans or site plans that would show all the specifics of development. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vandelite. Do you have any other comments or questions?
Am I still unmuted here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm not going to get really. So whenever they build or whenever they decide to build, is it going to be? Am I going to be notified? Is it going to be? Like right now, basically, I'm not trying to stop anything. But if it goes ahead and becomes commercial within the weeks or the month, whatever, however this works, I feel pretty much I'm out of the loop. I can't control of what I really want beside my property. And then as well as, so I'm going to just skip to the next conversation of my driveway. So we have an agreement, Mr. Leger and I, on like this driveway it was my right of way right to the 34, which is still outlined that way. And Mr. Leger had asked if he can pave it. We went through lawyers and everything, and basically I gave him the right of way to use it as his parking lot and pave it. And I can't take that away from him, and I can't block it, which is fine. But now that it's full parking lot, I'm being blocked out of my own driveway, and I understand it's a small yard. Can't really do much about it. People don't know it's a driveway, but now if Mr. Leger took over that residential part to commercial, I want him to understand that he doesn't take over that section of my driveway. Are we aware that that's not going to be in the plans here, right?
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor. So I believe you pointed out two components when you spoke. And what I would recommend for you right now is I intend to bring a staff report with a recommendation to council for our June 7th meeting. If you want to provide written comments, you certainly can do so, because you did learn some things at the meeting this evening, I'm sure, as you and I have not had a chance to speak. And the purpose of the public meeting tonight is for members of the public to be able to provide comments as to whether they could support or not support a commercial use in that location. So I'm sorry we can't provide you details of the development at this time, but this is normal for this type of process. And then in terms of speaking to your question in regards to the right of way, that is a legal right of access. So even if during the site plan control stage, the properties are proposed to be redeveloped, that would show another gas pump, maybe a new C-store office space, they can't take that right away from you. You always have the right to traverse that property, because that would be legally written in your deed, and you would have legal grounds to ensure that you always have that right of way. In regards to the public process, when we get to the site plan control stage, it's not a formal public process where you have another public meeting to be able to provide your comments. However, it is a public process in terms of an agreement is brought to council to enter into an agreement to approve the agreement and the site plan. Knowing that you have interest in the layout of that site, we will take note of that, and we will do our best to work with you during that development. But one thing to keep in mind when we get to the site plan control stage, when the application is approved, the only people that can appeal the decision would be the applicants, because at that point we've already established the zoning and the principle of development. So does that help answer all your questions, Mr. Vandelite? And if you have more, you and I can speak this week as well. Take your time. You can submit comments to me on Friday, and we'll do our best to address them if you wish.
Yeah, if you can hear me, yeah, I'll if I have more questions, I'll definitely reach out to you. I did call you today, but I understand we're all busy.
Yes,
Um,
I did return your call twice, sir, and left you messages, but as you mentioned, maybe you were working as well, so I'm sorry we didn't get to connect.
Anyways, it's all good. So
Thank you.
everything I guess is said, it needs to be said.
Okay.
Okay, like Mrs. Haley said, Mr. Vanderlight, if there's any more concerns, get in touch with her, or you can please put your comments in writing and have them to Mrs. Haley by Friday of this week.
Very good.
All right, thanks very much. Any other questions or comments? I don't see anybody else from the general public. Is there any other comments from council? Not seeing none, so we have nothing further for the rest of the evening this evening. So if I can have somebody adjourn the meeting, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Warden, second by Councillor Lang. All in favor? Meeting's adjourned. We will see you at a regular council